Welcome to the Grandfather's Cave. In today's video, I'm going to make a presentation of the combat rules for the Avern system. In the last videos, I have been making an introduction of ability scores, races, and classes. If you're new to this channel, subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any of the future videos. For today's video, I have recruited Julian to help me demonstrate the rules of the Avern system.
I'm Julian. Hi.
The adventurers in today's demonstration are Rennie, who is an Earthling scoundrel. He has an armor class of 16, has 6 stamina points and 6 health points, and he's specialized in the use of ranged weapons.
And we have John, the human fighter, who is using a greatsword and medium armor, with an AC of 15 and a stamina and health point pool of respectively 5 and 5.
You might see that we are using a grid on the board today, and the use of the grid is completely optional. We are playing gridless, as that provides a more fluid game with more interesting tactical options than if we're stuck to the grid. Our adventurers Rennie and John have just entered this dungeon and find themselves in a large chamber occupied by a band of goblins playing cards by a table in the far end. For simplicity's sake, we are going to assume that there is no surprise in this encounter. If there had been surprise in this encounter, the members of the surprising party would have a single action each before we roll initiative. Like most other systems, we start the combat round by rolling initiative. Initiative is rolled as a group initiative. Each party rolls a d10, adding a modifier equal to the number of members of that party. Thus, a low roll is good and a high roll is bad. So to roll initiative, we start by rolling a d10 for the goblins. The goblins roll a 2 and add 4 for a total of 6. Julian, will you roll for John and Rennie? Julian rolled a 5 and adds +2 for John and Rennie, for a total of 7. Thus, the goblins act first. Since the goblins act first, all 4 goblins get to take their turn before Rennie and John can react. During combat, every character and monster can choose to either take 1 double action or 2 single actions. In addition, they may make any number of individual free actions. However, no monster or character may repeat an individual free action during a single turn. Common double actions are running, charging, making an all-out attack, and casting most spells. Common single actions can be to draw a weapon, make an attack roll, or make a move action. Common free actions could be something like shouting a short sentence or taking a 5-foot step. For a more comprehensive list of the actions that you can take, I will advise that you check the PDF link in the description of this video, where you will find the full combat rules. Back to our example, John and Rennie rolled a 7 on the initiative and the goblins rolled a 6. So the goblins will take their actions first. Each goblin will have the option of taking either a double action or 2 single actions. In the back, we have a goblin armed with a bow. He would like to take a shot at John since he looks the most menacing. But from his current position, John will have cover since there are a couple of tables in the way for the goblin's shot. Thus, the goblin will take a move action to jump onto the table, and from this table he will have a clear shot at John with no obstacles in the way. The goblin is shooting a bow, so we're rolling a d20 for the attack roll and a d6 for the damage roll. The goblin archer has a +3 attack modifier with the bow, but no damage modifier. Rolling a 16, the goblin scores a hit of armor class 19. Is that sufficient to hit John?
It is.
Okay, so the goblin deals 2 points of damage.
John has a damage absorption of 2, which means that the 2 damage is negated.
Yeah, the arrow is simply stuck in John's armor, doing him no harm. The goblins would like to charge Rennie and John. If we take a look at this first goblin, we can see that he has no unobstructed charge line towards them because of the tables. Thus, the goblin moves 20 feet past the table, but can no longer take a charge since a charge is a full action. He can, however, use the last action to close in with Rennie, but is now unable to attack. The third goblin has a much better chance of making a charge. There's a free charge line, so he can move 40 feet in a straight line and attack Rennie if he gets within reach with his melee weapon. So this is 8 inches or 40 feet of movement and puts the goblin just shy of melee reach with Rennie. In order to be within melee reach, the figures must be within less than an inch of each other. The last goblin tries to flank our two adventurers by moving around a pillar like this. And now it's John and Rennie's turn.
I think John would like to start, since he is in melee combat right now with the two goblins, considering he has a greatsword with reach.
That's correct. John has a greatsword, and a greatsword is a weapon which allows him to attack enemies that are between 5 and 10 feet away. As you can see, John, he rolls a 19. What armor class does he hit?
He hits at armor class 23.
Alright, and since the goblin is armor class 15, that is a hit. And on top of that, 19 is within the critical threat range of the greatsword. And with the +3 totals an armor class of 23. Which is enough to hit a goblin with armor class 15. Against an opponent with an armor class of 24 or higher, this would not be a hit and would not be a critical hit. However, a natural 20 is always a hit and would be an automatic critical hit regardless of the enemy's armor class. Julian, how much damage does John do?
John does 2d6 worth of damage plus the 4 bonus from his strength.
Alright, and since it's a critical hit, we automatically turn the dice to their maximum values. So that's a 12 and +4, that's a 16. But in addition, a greatsword has a double damage critical multiplier, which allows you to roll 2 times John's luck die as a bonus damage.
And since John's luck is 13, that means that the luck die of John is 1d6. And that means that he gets to roll 2 extra d6. For an additional 6 damage total.
So 16 plus 6, that's 22 damage. And since your average goblin warrior has a d10 health points, it is killed automatically.
For his second action, John would like to leg sweep the remaining goblin, attempting a trip.
That's right, because you have 2 single actions and you spend 1 making an ordinary melee attack. You could choose to make 1 more melee attack, but you would incur a -5 follow-up attack penalty on that attack. However, if you choose to do another action that is not a melee attack roll, you do not incur that follow-up attack penalty. And combat maneuvers are such actions. So while a combat maneuver is a sort of attack, you do not suffer the -5 follow-up penalty. Usually when you do a trip combat maneuver, your opponent would get a free attack against you. But since the goblin does not have reach, it cannot hit John. So John gets to make his combat maneuver check without suffering any attack from the goblin. When attempting a trip or other combat maneuver, a character must make an opposed maneuver check. An opposed maneuver check is a d20 roll modified by the character's attack modifier and by the ability score associated with that maneuver. Trip maneuvers are modified by intelligence. So Julian, what are the modifiers on your maneuver check?
There will be a +1 from the attack bonus and a -1 from John's intelligence of 8.
Okay, so that's an unmodified d20. Please roll.
John rolls a 15.
Nice. The goblin does not have any intelligence modifier and only has a +1 attack modifier. So the goblin rolls at a +1. The goblin rolls a total of 5 and is tripped. Now the goblin has the prone condition.
As a free action, John would like to take a 5-foot step, moving behind the pillar to get cover from the goblin.
Now it's Rennie's turn, and seeing the threat from the archer, he aims his crossbow at the goblin archer. Rennie's range with the crossbow is 80 feet, that is 16 inches, so the goblin is well within the range of the crossbow shot. Rennie rolls a d20 on his attack roll, adding +1 from his attack bonus and +3 from his dexterity, for a total of +4. The attack roll is a modified 15, which is exactly enough to hit the goblin. The damage die, however, is only a +1. This goblin warrior has 5 health points and is wearing a light armor with damage absorption 1. However, the light crossbow has the armor-piercing 2 weapon characteristic, which allows the crossbow to ignore 2 points of damage absorption. So the goblin takes 1 point of damage and is reduced to 4 health points. With his second action, Rennie loads his crossbow and also takes a 5-foot step towards the pillar to get some cover. This concludes the first round of combat. Now we roll initiative for the second round of combat. We start with the goblins. Being reduced to 3, they now roll a d10 +3, for a total of 10.
The players then roll their initiative, which is a d10 plus 2 from the 2 remaining characters on the field.
And that's a 3. Renee and John get to go first.
Would you like to start the round, or should I?
Yeah, I think it would be best for Renee to start. He will shoot once more at the goblin standing on the table. Renee rolls an 18, which is a modified armor class 22, which is more than enough to hit the goblin, and does 7 points of damage. The goblin does not take to subtract its damage absorption from the shot because of the light crossbow's damage absorption value. Thus, the goblin takes 7 points of damage and is shot off the table. Renee loads his crossbow once more and takes a 5-foot step away from the goblin to make sure that he does not get charged.
Okay, John would like to take a 5-foot step towards the prone goblin and then make an attack towards it.
That goblin has the prone condition, which gives it a -4 on its own attack rolls and a -4 to its armor class. Thus, the goblin is only armor class 11 right now. So you roll a 9.
John then rolls a 9 and plus the 4 attack bonus that makes for a total of 13.
And that's a hit.
Okay, and in terms of damage numbers, John rolls a total of 4 plus his damage bonus of 4 for a total of 8 damage.
And the goblin gets to subtract 1 point because of its damage absorption, so that's only 7 points of damage, but that is still enough to kill the goblin. Does John do anything more?
John would now from this position want to take a move action to move out of the line of the goblin's potential charge.
Now it's the goblin's turn. Seeing that his friends have been taken out, it chooses to withdraw from the combat and it makes a run. The run action is a double action that allows the goblin to run 4 times its speed. The goblin can run 16 inches, which brings it off of the board. Now we have discussed initiative and action economy in combat. We have also introduced the concepts of critical hits and combat maneuvers, but in order to showcase some more rules, let's turn up the heat on John and Rennie. Rennie and John have examined the room and picked off whatever valuables they could find on the goblins. All of a sudden, Rennie and John realize that they are not alone. The goblin has returned, and this time he is not alone. The goblin has made the most of it and has gathered some reinforcements in the form of 3 ferocious gnolls. Neither John, Rennie, or the monsters are surprised, so we'll just go ahead and roll initiative as earlier. John and Rennie roll a d10 plus 2 as before, but the monsters roll a d10 plus 4 since there is now 1 goblin and 3 gnolls.
First we're rolling initiative for John and Rennie. That is a 6 plus 2.
That's an 8. And the monsters roll an 8, modified by plus 4, that's a 12. So Rennie and John get to go first.
So in this position, would Rennie or John want to move first?
I think Rennie would be the one to go first. He will try to take a shot at the closest gnoll. He can make a non-obstructed roll against the gnoll, and with a bit of luck, he might be able to avoid being charged with that great axe. Rennie will use his deadly aim feat, which allows him to subtract 1 from the attack roll and add plus 2 to the damage roll. Thus, Rennie rolls an attack with a plus 3 attack roll modifier. Rennie rolls an 11 plus 3, that is 14. The gnoll has an armor class of 14 and is thus hit. Rennie rolls a 5 on the damage, but adds plus 2 from the deadly aim. That's a total of 7. The gnoll has 1 point of damage absorption, which is negated by Rennie's armor-piercing crossbow, and thus the gnoll subtracts 7 health points from its total pool of health points of 11. It has 4 health points remaining. Rennie immediately reloads his crossbows and takes a 5-foot step into cover behind the table to avoid being charged.
Okay. John readies an attack with his greatsword to embrace for a charging opponent.
The ready action is a single action that any character can take that allows them to take a single action out of their own turn as a reaction to something else occurring on the battlefield. Right now, John has readied to attack any enemy charging him. The first enemy to charge him is a gnoll with the spear and the shield. The gnoll can charge any target within 60 feet, and since there are no obstructions in the path of the gnoll, it simply lunges forward towards John. At this point, it is within the reach of John's greatsword, and he can make his radiate attack. So you roll a 10. What armor class is that?
That is armor class 14.
Armor class 14 is exactly enough to hit a gnoll. But in addition, the gnoll's armor class was reduced by 2 because it was charging. So that's a solid hit. How much damage does John do?
John rolls a 6 and a 2, plus his damage bonus of 4 for a total of 12 damage.
The gnoll has damage absorption 1 and reduces that to 11. But the gnoll's maximum health points is actually 11. So that's exactly enough to drop the gnoll to the ground. Now it's the turn for the gnoll leader. With his first single action, he declares a parry maneuver, and with his second action, he closes in with John. The gnoll can move 30 feet, so he can easily get within reach of John. However, when he gets within the melee reach of John's greatsword, it is threatened. And since John has the combat reflexes feat, he gets a free attack against the gnoll when it tries to move out of this threatened area. So now you get to roll an attack roll for John. You roll an 11.
Plus 4, that equals for a total of 15.
The gnoll leader is armor class 15, so he would actually be hit by this attack from John. However, it now gets an opportunity to parry that attack. To parry that attack, the gnoll uses its plus 2 attack bonus, plus 2 from its strength modifier, and an additional plus 1 from being able to parry with a shield. So that's a total of plus 5. The gnoll rolls a 10, which is 15, which is exactly enough to block the attack from John. The gnoll has now closed in with John and has parried his attack, but is not able to do anything else since it has spent both of its single actions. However, the gnoll leader still has the opportunity to take a 5-foot step as a free action and moves closer with John to parry the approach of his ally gnoll. Now the third gnoll moves in. It takes a single action that puts it just behind its leader, and with a 5-foot step, it moves into combat reach with John. Since the leader was between the gnoll and John, John does not get to use his combat reflexes to make a free attack against the last gnoll. The gnoll now uses its last single action to make an attack, rolling an attack roll with a plus 3 bonus to hit. The gnoll rolled a 17, that's armor class 20.
That hits John.
And the gnoll deals 1d12 plus 3 damage, that is 5 damage to John.
John, through his medium armor, has 2 damage absorption, which means that he takes a total of 3 damage immediately going into his stamina point pool.
Since John still has stamina points left, he has not taken any injury whatsoever and can fight on without any impediments. Being a cowardly little creature, the goblin does not want to rush into melee combat and uses an action to move behind his pillar, then takes a 5-foot step to get into position behind it, and while neither Rennie or John can see it, it pulls out a throwing dagger, ready to attack next round. That concludes this round of combat, and we start the next round by rolling an initiative once again. The gnolls and the goblins roll a d10 plus 3, since one of the gnolls is dead now. That's a total of 5.
The player party now rolls their initiative, which is a 7 plus 2 from the party size.
So that's a 9. The monsters go first. Seeing an opportunity, the goblin steps out from behind the pillar and throws a throwing dagger at John. The range of the throwing dagger is only 10 feet, so we'll have to measure the distance between John and the goblin. The distance is 3 inches, which is the equivalent of 15 feet. The goblin suffers a -2 range penalty. However, John is flanked by the 2 gnolls, and having the flank condition decreases his armor class by 2, which negates the range penalty. The goblin throws a dagger with a +3 modifier, hitting armor class 15.
Which is exactly enough to connect with John.
And the dagger scores 1 point of damage, and thus has not enough force to penetrate John's armor with a damage absorption of 2. The gnolls now press the advantage as they have flanked John. One of the gnolls gets into better position and attacks with its great axe. It rolls a total attack roll of 9, which is not enough to hit John. John is normally armor class 15, but is now armor class 13 because of the flank condition. However, the gnoll still has an attack, so it makes 1 more attack with a -5 follow-up penalty. The gnoll rolls a 9. With its +4 attack roll modifier, that's a 13, which would be enough to hit John, who is flanked. However, this is a follow-up attack, so the additional -5 penalty takes it down to armor class 8, which is not sufficient to hit John. John got off easy. Now is the gnoll leader. The gnoll leader is armed with a small spiked shield and a flail, and is going to use his 2-weapon fighting ability to make an all-out attack against John. When wielding a one-handed weapon in one hand and a light weapon in its offhand, the gnoll can attack with both weapons as a double action, suffering a -2 penalty on both attacks. Since the gnoll leader normally has a +5 bonus on attack rolls, it will make 2 attack rolls with a +3 modifier. The gnoll attacks with its flail, hitting armor class 5.
That is less than 15.
So that's a miss. Now the Gnoll attacks with its spiked light shield, also at a +3 modifier. That's an armor class 12.
12 is exactly one shy of hitting a flanked John.
Oh. John got easy off and was not hit by the Gnoll leader's all-out attack. The Gnoll leader finishes his turn by taking a 5-foot step. And now it's John and Rennie's turn. I suggest that Rennie acts first. Rennie sees an opportunity to shoot the Gnoll leader. Even though the Gnoll leader is adjacent to both Rennie and John, it is not flanked, since Rennie is not threatening it with its ranged weapon. You can only threaten someone with a melee weapon. Rennie rolls poorly on his attack roll and misses. Instead of reloading his crossbow, he draws his dagger with his last single action. Now the Gnoll leader is threatened. John's turn.
John takes a 5-foot step to then prepare a trip against the Gnoll leader. John attempts a trip against the Gnoll leader, failing dramatically.
That's not sure. It is 5 plus 1 from John's attack bonus and -1 from John's intelligence. That's a modified roll of 5. The Gnoll has a negative intelligence, which gives it a -1. And a +2 attack modifier. So it has a net modifier of +1. So if the Gnoll leader rolls a 4 or lower, you would trip it. The Gnoll leader rolls a 12. So you're 8 points short of tripping the leader. It could have been worse. If you had failed the roll by 10, you'd have been tripped yourself. You still have a single action.
John would like to use his last action to make an attack on the Gnoll leader.
Oh, that's a fumble. When we roll a fumble, we have to look at the fumble table. Fumbles in Avern are not meant to be a severe handicap or something that damages the entire party, but it is supposed to add some flavor to the combat. When a character rolls a natural 1 on an attack roll, that is called a fumble, and the player should follow it up by rolling a d6 plus their luck die. A high result is good, a low result is bad. You rolled an 11, which means that you drop an item that is not held in your primary hand. So roll a d6 once again.
3.
A 3. A belt or a bandolier. So if your character was wearing a belt or a bandolier that were particularly useful, you would have dropped those now and would not be able to use them. However, as silly as it is, John is just struggling with his belt, trying to keep his pants on while fighting off the Gnolls. That concludes one more round of combat. Let's roll initiative again. The Gnolls and the Goblin roll a modified 12.
And the player party rolls a modified 3.
Alright, let's start with him. Would John like to go first? See if he can get a lucky punch on the Gnoll leader?
Okay, John attempts to trip the Gnoll leader again.
And the Gnoll leader is still flanked because Rennie is threatening it with a dagger.
That is a total of 15.
Alright. And the Gnoll leader gets a modified 10 and is tripped by John. What now?
John would now attempt an attack against the prone Gnoll leader.
That's a 16. No, that's an 18.
Plus 4 from John's attack bonus.
And so that's a total of armor class 22.
Yes, it does. And it deals 7 damage to the Gnoll leader.
Yeah, armor class 22. And the Gnoll leader, he was armor class 15. But since he's prone and he's flanked, he's down to armor class 9 right now. So yeah, you hit him and you deal how much? 7 damage?
7 damage, yes.
And we subtract 1 from the Gnoll leader's armor. So that's a total of 6 damage.
John is now done with his turn.
Then it's Rennie's turn. He drops his dagger, loads his crossbow as a single action, and with his last single action, he tries to shoot the Gnoll next to John. Being in close combat, the Gnoll is considered to have cover from ranged attacks. However, since Rennie has the precise shot feat, he can ignore the cover bonus the Gnoll gets. In addition, he wants to use his deadly aim to subtract 1 from the attack roll and adds +2 to the damage roll. So he rolls with a total of +3 on the attack roll. Rolling an 18, that is armor class 21, which is sufficient to hit the Gnoll's armor class 14, and he does 2 + 3 damage from the deadly aim. And the armor piercing quality of the crossbow ignores the damage absorption of the Gnoll. The Gnoll takes 4 damage. Now it's the Gnoll's turn. The Gnoll leader stands up and attacks Rennie. It rolls a 19 on the die, which is an armor class 23 on the attack roll. That is enough for a critical hit, and Rennie takes 6 points of damage from the damage die, +2 from the Gnoll's strength modifier, that's 8, and an additional 2d4 for 3 more points of damage. That's 11. René gets to subtract 1 from his armor, so that's 10. René has 6 stamina points, which are all lost by this attack. And the last 4 points of damage are deducted from René's health points. Now René has lost all his stamina points and must roll a Constitution check, DC 15, to avoid becoming fatigued. This roll is modified by René's Constitution modifier of +1, but he has to subtract 2 from his armor check penalty. This signifies that moving around in combat is much harder and more tiring when you're using heavy armor and a shield than if you're using nothing or just a light armor. René rolls a 16 for a modified 15. He just actually makes it. Now René has taken 4 points of health damage, which is more than half his health points. That means that while René just made his fortitude save to avoid being fatigued, he still sustained a normal injury. To determine a normal injury, we roll percentile dice, and a 48 means that his right hand is injured. That means he takes a -2 penalty on attack rolls, skill and ability checks with that hand. As we can see, when a character starts getting injured, it becomes much harder to continue the fight, and René and John should seriously consider to withdrawing from this combat. The Gnoll leader uses its last single action to make a parry maneuver against the next attack directed at it. The second Gnoll attacks John. Its first attack is armor class 13,
which is not enough to hit John right now.
and it makes a follow-up attack with a -5 penalty for armor class 2. So it swings wildly 2 times with its great axe, but does not manage to hit John. The last combatant this round is the Goblin. The Goblin moves in to attack John with its spear. And it rolls a 1. Another fumble. Rolling on the fumble table, the Goblin gets a 5. And a 5 means that your armor locks up. Your speed is reduced by 1/3 of your base speed. So this Goblin is now down to 15 points of speed and cannot run. And in addition, the Goblin suffers a -4 penalty on armor class, attack rolls, and strength or dex-based abilities and skill checks. If the Goblin wants to fix this wardrobe malfunction, it will have to use a double action to get its armor unlocked. And now we are on to the next round. The Gnolls and the Goblin get a 9.
And the player party gets a 7.
Right, so John and René first again.
John exclaims, "This isn't going great! I'm leaving!" And immediately disengages and runs away from the dungeon.
All right. Well, René was never a coward to begin with. But even while he's not the brightest of the clan, he is not dumb enough to stick around. So René, he takes a 5-foot step away from the Gnoll leader and makes a dash for the other side of the table and starts running out of the Great Hall. With a couple of their comrades dead, the Goblins and Gnolls do not want to follow John and René out of the dungeon, and the 2 adventurers escape with their lives. During this fight, John has sustained some stamina damage. After 15 minutes have passed and he has gotten the opportunity to rest, he recovers all lost stamina. The same goes for René. After these 15 minutes pass, the effect from René's normal injury subsides as well, and he no longer takes any penalty from it. However, the health points recover at a slower rate than the stamina points. Health points are recovered at the rate of 1 health point per hit die of the character for each night of rest, or alternatively 2 health points per hit die of the creature for each full day of bed rest. Thus, René will be at full strength within a day or 2, depending on what else they encounter during the next days, and his recovery could be enhanced even further if he finds a friendly cleric along the road. I hope you found this walkthrough of the combat rules of the Avern system interesting. And if you haven't done already, subscribe and ring the notification bell, press a like, and leave a comment. What did you particularly like about this walkthrough? Are there any questions that you think were unanswered? And are there other things that you think we could do differently? As you might see, this is not our strong suit. We have not tried making videos like this before, but I think it was fun, and we might be able, and we might be willing to make some more in the future. Maybe a showcase of the magic system or something like that. How did you find it?
Uncertain.
Until next time, keep slaying.